Does Optus's promise of 50 megasecond 5G really stack up?
And why did TPG abandon its mobile network ambitions?
Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined by a man who, though he insists he doesn't follow sport, but claims he hasn't yet been eliminated from this year's Royal Rumble, Alex Kidman. As we go behind the headlines in search of the big picture, Alex, have you got like the Spanish wrestling mask or something like that? What's your wrestling name?
Look, I don't know what the ref saw. I never, ever went over the top rope. I should be going to WrestleMania, damn it.
All right. Well, as we get the judges to look into that, we're also joined once again by Gizmodo Australia Deputy Editor and Supreme Commander Tegan Jones. Tegan, welcome back to the show.
How can I resist when I get to be a Supreme Commander here? I love it.
This week, we're peeling back the hype to look at the details around Optus's 5G fixed wireless home broadband plans, as well as TPG's rather awkward exit from the mobile network game in Australia. But first, over to the tech news desk. Alex, what's happening in tech?
Netflix is the latest company to be the target of scammers, with Australians being targeted by emails claiming that accounts have been suspended due to issues in the automatic verification process. It's a scam, of course, so under no circumstances should you follow links in any emails like that. If you're concerned, open a fresh browser window up, go to www.netflix.com and log in there. If there's any issue, Netflix will be sure to let you know.
iGadget owners have been rushing to disable FaceTime this week after news of a security flaw which turns Apple gadgets into a listening device for eavesdropping on real world conversations. The bug can be exploited by starting a FaceTime video call to the intended target and then adding your own number as a third party participant on the call. At this point, you can hear what's happening on the other end even before the target answers the call. Apple says it's developed a fix for this group FaceTime bug, which will be rolled out in a software update in the coming days.
Huawei's in a spot of bother with the US government, to put it politely, with Chief Financial Officer Meng Wanzhou accused of wire fraud and conspiring to steal trade secrets, part of a long and ongoing argument over whether the Chinese firm is at the beck and call of the Chinese government. Those concerns have landed here in Australia, with the Western Australian government looking into the contract Huawei won to build the 4G LTE network for the Perth train system. The Western Australian government says it's reviewing the contract in light of potential trade embargoes. Huawei is far from the first Chinese firm to feel the brunt of US anger, with ZTE's business all but collapsing on the back of trade embargoes enacted last year that saw, amongst other issues, most of Telstra's own brand phones taken off the market.
Facebook has come under fire for paying teens $20 in return for installing software on their phones, which lets the social media giant monitor and analyze all data going to and from their device. In order to bypass Apple security, Facebook has been instructing iPhone users to sideload this app using an Apple Enterprise Developer Certificate, which is not what they are designed for. The research app is basically a clone of Facebook's Onavo monitoring app, which Apple booted from their App Store last year over privacy and security concerns. This latest breach of security has seen Apple cut off Facebook's access to its enterprise developer program, with talk of Google facing the same fate over a similar app it uses to monitor smartphone usage.
So, Adam, I've been enjoying this FaceTime bug story this week, and obviously hacking into your iPhone. I never knew that you listened to Barbie Girls so many times a day.
Hey man, what a man listens to in his own private home is none of anybody else's business.
Well, it is if
Let's
you're using
just leave it at
FaceTime.
that. Yeah, I guess. Well, it is if you're using FaceTime, and I think they might have actually killed the group FaceTime message service itself. So even before they roll out the fix, it doesn't work anymore. But this is a pretty big deal. At first, I thought, oh, who cares? Because you'd noticed that the phone's ringing, but if you didn't notice the phone wasn't ringing, or someone got to your phone and put it on mute first, it's disturbing at what people could maybe do with this. Tegan, Are you concerned about these kind of things? Are you an iPhone user or just in general about people listening in on your smartphone?
Oh yeah, I'm ultra paranoid. I mean, I'm not an iPhone user anymore outside of when I'm reviewing them, but as someone who is an absolute fiend for having my phone on silent all of the time, yeah, it's a huge concern. I think a lot of people would be in the same boat. You know, whether they're like me and have it on silent all the time or they're at work. Like, imagine what people could be listening and watching in on, because we've got to remember in some cases it was video as well.
Yeah, the view from inside your pocket's very disturbing, Adam.
Hey,
I
what a
was gonna
man
say, what
does in
did you
his own
see during
private
Barbie Girl?
his
But
own private time, all right?
no, I mean you're totally right, Tegan, and it flies in the face of Apple's whole kind of mantra of what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. Well, no, not so much. Although it is a software bug. Software has bugs. They do get fixed, and they seem to at least to have worked pretty quickly to quash this
I
particular one.
mean, was it that quickly though? We've got to remember that, the mother of the 14-year-old who was playing Fortnite that discovered it tried to quietly get in touch with Apple at first, even kind of vaguely tweeted at them without giving away too many details, and she got no response until it was reported on by 9 to 5 Mac.
Well, this is true. Apple does not comment on rumors, speculation, or the idea that its products are not in fact perfect, as we
Yeah,
know.
that's right. I mean, commenting on, but even just responding to someone who tried to do it quietly and wasn't just trying to publicly embarrass them.
I think it's a bit of an issue for Apple as well, just because FaceTime actually generally works really well. I mean, relative to its competitors, it's got some of the smoothest video. It's basically the easiest setup. It's actually quite a good piece of software. So while I don't use an iPhone day to day, I have one running for comparative purposes, and it's still a really good platform. And that's a particularly good bit of software on it. So, I mean, hopefully the fix doesn't mean that Apple just says, oh, yeah, group calling. No, that's not a thing anymore.
Oh, I doubt it. I think you're right. Like you said, it's a bug. It happened. I don't think they're going to kill what is usually quite a good bit of software, over this.
So, after all the talk about 5G over the last few years, we're finally seeing some action with Optus launching its long promised 5G fixed wireless home broadband service recently. Now, we said last week on the show that we were expecting this any day, and it just snuck in time for us to talk about it. Tegan, you were on the ground at the launch in Canberra. What did Optus have to say?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as we know now, they're the first Australian telco to have, 5G in the home, which is exciting. What we know so far is that there's two live sites in Canberra. So in Dixon, where we were flown out to today, as well as Manuka. And so one of the biggest things is that we can't exactly say that they've got broadband plans because it's not a plural. It's just one so far. So $70 for unlimited data. So I think it's important to note that it's not broadband plans. It's not a plural. There's only one so far. So it's $70 a month for unlimited data with a guarantee of 50 megabits per second satisfaction guarantee, which I found very interesting because it doesn't actually mean what some people might think that it does.
Yeah, for older kind of listeners, they might remember a Clayton's thing. The thing you have when you're the one you have when you're not having a wine was classically what it was. Tegan, you're undoubtedly too young for that kind of thing. But this really strikes me that way because it's if you as the consumer don't feel as though you're getting 50 meg, then Optus will let you walk away from the contract, which
That's
is
right.
not quite a we guarantee that you'll actually get this, which makes sense in that context of hey, it's physics and 5G is pretty short range, but it's pretty short availability as well, isn't it, Tegan?
That's 100% correct. But what is interesting, what you're saying there, is that when I spoke to both Dennis Wong and to Alan Liu today about this, because nowhere in the press release did it actually make that clarification. You actually have to go to the website to see what they actually mean by that satisfaction guarantee. And both of them were very strong on the fact that if someone is unhappy with that 50 megabits per second, it is probably not Optus's fault. They were very strong on the fact that, they know what they're doing, their infrastructure is going to be there. They, know exactly how many people they're going to have like on each tower, and that if something goes wrong, it will be because of an unforeseen circumstance, whether that is someone builds a building next to your house between you and your tower, whether your hotspot, breaks for some reason, anything that isn't Optus's fault, but they still want to then, provide customer service to get you out of it if you're unhappy.
Adam, didn't Optus think that they knew what they were doing before some kind of sporting event last year?
It does ring a bell. It does ring a bell where they'd screwed it up before and said, no, 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 we got this. We got this. Yeah, they're not known for those kind of things, but this isn't as ambitious as their sort of World Cup streaming. They are starting small. It's a couple of sites in Melbourne's not even in the first round. There's a couple of
Victoria
sites.
doesn't exist for Optus 5G. This is one of the bigger parts of
That's
this
a little
story, actually.
harsh. I mean, I know I've been critical of Optus over the years, but that is a little bit vindictive, I think, on their part.
It's not just you, Tasmania and the Northern Territory also miss out in this first run.
And they're not signing people. Like they said they would launch a service in January, and on the very last day of January they announced the service, but they haven't actually launched it yet. And they're all the what is it? They've opened expressions of interest for a 50-person trial or something like that. So it is they've just snuck in by the skin of their teeth on this one.
That's exactly right. And we don't even have a hard date on, when people actually get this into their homes. They're throwing the March around quite a bit, but it's a bit of a wait and see.
If you look at their site, they're saying mid-year, or most people will have mid-year, but some may receive modems earlier.
That's exactly right, and that will be those
Exactly.
test subjects, I suppose.
So it's really we announced it before Telstra.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah.
They are also talking, Tegan, you mentioned that it's a single plan. They made mention in their press release, and I tried to chase them on this today, of month-to-month plans as well. And I chased them on this, and they eventually said, "Oh, we'll reveal the pricing and plans for that at a later date." But I wonder if you go in at $70 a month for unlimited data, and especially for home broadband, do you actually have much wriggle room? I mean, are there that many customers who are going to go, "I want 5G speeds, but I only want 10 gig of data"? I doubt
Yeah,
it.
exactly right. I mean, a really good comparison is, when NBN was first being rolled out to test areas, and my parents are in one of them, and they have it before I even do now, and they don't use it. So I think you're right that the people that are really going to want 5G and be, have it this year or be, in on the ground floor aren't going to be the sort of people that barely use it. They're going to want unlimited or very close to it.
So Alex, you're always on top of the NBN plans. How does this stack up against what you would get on an NBN service for the price and the speeds and the allowance?
So $70 a month is fairly aggressive for a 50 meg plan. It's not super aggressive. It's actually achievable. And some of the providers are pushing, especially with that 100 meg rebate we were talking about recently.
Yeah.
Some of the providers are pushing towards that price point for 100. Now, I did query Optus on their speeds on this a bit, and they said that at their test sites, they're seeing 100, and they reckon the network has got potential to go up to a gig, which obviously would blow NBN plans out of the water. But that's forward looking, and obviously NBN could rebut with, well, yes, but fiber, especially full fiber, if you're lucky enough, can go even faster, and it can. In terms of straight pricing, it's decent, and there's some very obvious use cases that occur to me. If you happen to be in one of these random sets of suburbs, and they really are kind of all over the place, they're not just kind of inner city CBD the way we saw, for example, with the 4G rollout. If you were in an area that for the weird reasons of the NBN was fixed wireless or satellite, you'd jump at it. You'd be mad not to, really, because it's going to be better than what you're getting. If you're on a dodgy fiber to the node connection and you know you can't get 50, then maybe there's a replacement story there as well. But obviously it also comes down to this variability thing, because if you're in that situation, your neighbors are probably in that situation. And as soon as everyone jumps onto a wireless network, everyone's sharing the same spectrum and the speeds go down.
Yeah. Tegan, what kind of impact do you think this will have on the NBN? Obviously not too much in the short term, but in the short to medium term.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. As someone who literally was only able to access NBN from this week, that's how long I've been waiting in my suburb. I really think I would have been tempted by it, especially for those speeds. I mean, obviously we don't know when it's going to be available in my area, but let's say in a fantasy land where 5G came to me before NBN did, absolutely, I'd jump at that. I think that, and even Optus said this in person today. They, when questioned whether it would be an NBN killer, they were very careful to say that they think it could complement the NBN. You know, there's certain people that will want one thing, certain people want the other. So I don't think that this will kill NBN, but there will be people that will really benefit from this, definitely.
It's that continuity of service thing. And they always use the term complement when they're
Of
talking about the
course.
NBN. I don't know if there's some NBN rule for the ISPs that are on it. And of course, you can get Optus NBN plans, but they always talk about it as being a complementary service, and not without reason, because it's that shared spectrum, because these other factors you were talking about, people put buildings in the way, or a tree blows in the wrong way, or there's just too many darned people around. They can't absolutely guarantee the speeds. And okay, to be fair, you can't entirely do that on a fixed connection, but you can get that steady throughput a lot more easily and in a lot more controllable fashion.
That's right, and it's interesting that you bring that up about congestion as well, because that was another one of the narratives that was really focused on today, both in the press event and when I spoke to some of the execs afterwards. One of the things I was obviously very interested in was congestion, because whether you're at a concert or you, Alex, obviously at a football match or something where there's a lot of people around, congestion is a problem. And they seem pretty confident that the way they're going to be setting it up is that, you know, this will alleviate that in a lot of ways. They still need to prove it, but they're really addressing the two main pain points that they see for users, which is the 7 to 11 p.m. in homes and those very congested sort of times or areas, airports and whatnot included.
So we're still waiting on 5G handsets, and Telstra is going to be the first with that. We heard them talking about it a couple of weeks ago at CES. Tegan, what do you think we're likely to see? Is that maybe Mobile World Congress, where they'll put more of their cards on the
Yeah,
table?
I'm hoping so. Today's chat again was just interesting in terms of everyone was asking about 5G handsets, and Optus was remaining tight-lipped on it, of course, kept on saying what everyone was saying at CES, which is mid-year. So yeah, no, I do think that we're going to see 5G at Mobile World Congress. Look, I would love to see a Samsung one. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it's just going to be interesting, because what we've seen in prototypes so far, including the Samsung one that was also cropped up at CES, and also one that I've seen at Telstra, they're they're bulky and a little bit janky still. So I don't know if they're necessarily ready for regular consumers in 2019 yet. I really need to be convinced.
Yeah.
See, the thing with Mobile World Congress, though, is we'll see the launches of those form factors, those less janky form factors, but they'll
Sure.
then say, but they'll be available mid-year. I mean, the technology's there. Qualcomm's had its
Mhm.
5G modem out there for a while. Huawei just announced its own 5G
Sure.
stuff, and sure, they're blocked from building 5G networks in Australia, but there's no way they won't try and sell 5G handsets, and they're not blocked from doing that. So they've got their
Absolutely.
own technology there. So the tech's there. They've just got to build it into into phones that people want and make use cases that are going to make sense, especially globally, because everywhere is in a slightly different space when it comes to how their 5G networks are rolling out across the planet. And for MWC, that's really important, because you might launch, we will almost certainly see, in fact, some 5G phones that will be specifically America's only or China only. I don't know that we'll see a whole bunch of Australia only or even Australia specific phones, but we'll see. I'm confident we will see phones with 5G in.
Absolutely. I would be shocked if there was ones that were going to be for Australia. Like pleasantly shocked, but shocked. But hey, I think my big crazy won't ever actually happen prediction, but would be amazing, is a 5G foldable. That's what I'm in it for.
Some Chinese firm you've never
Yeah.
heard of is shipping them to Barcelona as we speak.
Yeah, and it'll be the dodgiest thing you've ever seen, but it'll be first. So, Alex, along with our suit du jour, the NBN, one of the ongoing topics that we've talked about on the podcast for a couple of years now is this fourth mobile network coming to Australia from TPG. Now they say it's no more.
The TPG mobile network, the mobile network they were building themselves, they've pulled the plug on. And the official reasoning that they're giving is because of the ban on using Huawei produced 5G networking equipment for Australian 5G networks. Basically, they'd started building and pricing and costing on Huawei equipment. They tested and built some trial sites and sorted some stuff out because TPG, of course, actually has some really significant spectrum holdings for both 4G and 5G. And the 5G is through its joint venture with Vodafone, of course. And then the ban came down, and they've looked at the numbers and said, well, actually, no, we can't do this. Their official statement was, in light of the government's announcement in late August 2018 that it would prohibit the use of Huawei equipment in 5G networks, the upgrade path to 5G has now been blocked. It's taken them a while to come to this decision, although it's probably not entirely to do with Huawei equipment, if we're being honest.
Because they're not the only ones that were using Huawei equipment that had to change their plans, are they?
No, they're not. I mean, the Optus 5G network that Tegan was at the launch of, that was originally being built on Huawei equipment, and then they switched tracks, and I believe they were showing off a bunch of Nokia gear today, Tegan. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one piece of gear specifically, but what the difference was between Optus and TPG, and I specifically asked them about this today when I spoke to the CEO, was that they actually hadn't started building in the same way that TPG had. So where TPG were very happy to tell us that they, their rollout had cost at least 100 million in capital expenditure plus another 30. With Optus, they hadn't started building yet. So from what they were telling me, it really hadn't cost them in the same way when they swapped to Nokia.
There's an elephant in the room here, though, and it's not Huawei. It's the ACCC, and it's specifically that Vodafone TPG merger, because the ACCC is still pausing on that whole rubber stamp yes to the TPG Vodafone merger. And one of the things that it cited as a big problem was the lack of competition, because if Vodafone and TPG merged, TPG wouldn't build its fourth network.
Sim smash.
I was just waiting for that. Okay, well, look, from my viewpoint, the ACCC is doing what the ACCC is meant to do. It is doing the sim smash.
Yeah.
TPG is doing the end around on this. It's saying, okay, if that's a barrier to getting this merger happening, especially as TPG ends up basically running the combined TPG Vodafone entity, if the ACCC is saying, oh, the fourth network's a problem because it wouldn't exist, well, let's just cancel it, because then it's not part of the story. Then we're just merging with Vodafone, and hey, then it's the same network it was before. And that might grease the wheels. It might actually, get the sim smash to calm down into, Dr. Bruce Sim. No, that metaphor just fell apart as I said it, but I think people knew what I meant.
It was flimsy to begin with. It was always
Definitely.
flimsy.
No, I certainly think that it's far more likely to get over the line now. Would TPG really? I mean, I could see them saying, "Okay, look, this incredibly unfortunate thing has happened that's cost us, $100 million. So, how can we make, this problem go away? Let's take advantage of a bad situation." But I don't necessarily think that they were, would have tried to get out of it if Huawei hadn't gone in the can or anything like that. I don't think it's necessarily as nefarious as some people might think that it is, but I can certainly see your point that, look, let's take advantage of a bit of a crap situation.
And the thing is, if the merger goes ahead, whatever they've built, presuming it doesn't contain banned Huawei gear, they can still use. They can still use that expertise as well. And undoubtedly, within the merger process, they would have been already reasonably deep into the logistics, into the weeds of how you do all this kind of merging and who'd own the spectrum and how they deploy all of it. And that, I think, will still continue on. What I think, though, is lost here is much hope of seeing really cheap unlimited plans, because the big headline factor for that TPG network was this whole promise of $10 a month for an unlimited plan. And sure, it was only like, I think, a gig of data, and then you were speed limited. But for an awful lot of people, that would be enough.
Oh, 100%. And yeah, I do think that that's most likely dead in the water. I mean, I hope not. It'd be great if it wasn't, but I think you're right. And it's really going to be interesting to see what happens in April now.
And if they were going to do that, they sort of wanted to get some of a bit of a jump on the others and get in early in 5G. And if this is going to slow everything down, it just might be that the moment is lost. So even if they could, retool and switch across to Nokia, or I think Ericsson, like Telstra uses, It might be
Mm.
just that the opportunity was gone and it was just time to let it go.
But the question then is if they, they've already sunk all of this money into it, and let's say they do go ahead and do that and they swap vendors instead, will that affect the pricing then? Like the plan pricing then, because they've had to sink all of this extra money in again?
Well, I think the reality, TPG, of course, as a brand, has always sold itself as ultra affordable, low cost,
Hmm.
unlimited. That's how it built itself up. But it never got terribly big in mobile. And while Vodafone is definitively the third network in terms of size, it's much, much, much bigger in that space. I think it was always the case that TPG was going to jump up to Vodafone pricing. Vodafone wasn't going to jump down to
Yeah.
TPG. But in the 5G space, a lot of that spectrum they don't get access to, if memory serves, until next year, unless they're granted early access to that spectrum. Now, Telstra's already announced, hey, we've got early access to that spectrum. I haven't seen, and I can't recall seeing anything from Vodafone along those lines.
No, it's
So
always been
their 5G
2020.
rollout's always going to be a bit later anyway. And that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. And like always, we love to get your feedback. Keen to get some Optus 5G into you, or appalled that TPG will no longer offer you cheap mobile plans? Let us know via Twitter or the Vertical Hold Facebook page. And as always, it's a pleasure to have Tegan take time out of her busy day to join us. Tegan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks everyone for listening. Remember, we're on a big push this year to reach more people. So it really helps if you jump on iTunes or your podcasting platform of choice, leave a review and help us spread the word.
Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin.
Yeah, so I made a quiche and it's really good and I'm excited for it.